Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai to today's episode of the Niche Cast. Coming at you from Aotearoa, we are the Niche Cache, and we are here to broadcast Aotearoa sporting glory, excellence, and abundance. On behalf of the Niche Cache, we're always writing about Aotearoa sports at the niche-cache.com. That is where you can find regular Aotearoa football business. You can find Flying Kiwis every Tuesday. You can find regular breakdowns of Steven Adams in the NBA. You can find monthly updates on Lydia Co. And tomorrow, you will be able to find a big old breakdown on the White Ferns World Cup squad that we're going to discuss on today's podcast. So big up to the website, the blog, the web page, whatever you want to call it. It's there, www.theniche-cache.com. Big up to all the Patreon whānau. Shout out to our newest Patreon, Richard Bell. Kia kaha to yourself and welcome haere mai to the Patreon whānau. And that is the best way to support the Niche Cache and what we're doing here. So if you do enjoy the Aotearoa sports content and want to help us continue to grow and maintain, sustain our trajectory on what we're doing here, join the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/our Niche Cache, EL Niche Cache. We do an extra podcast every week. And yeah, it's just hopefully do a lot more for the Patreon whānau in the future as well. And we also deliver an email bang every Monday and Friday evenings, thenichecache.substack.com. And we have all the Niche Cache content delivered to you via that email. So if you're off social media, which we're all trying to do, get away from our scrolling business, you can just wait for the Niche Cache to be emailed to you every Monday and Friday evening. How about that? Tune in twice a week and you can just do bulk reading. That sounds pretty cool. Or bulk podcast consumption. Or you can read all the regular Niche Cache stuff, and then you can also read the special email yarns, which tomorrow the Wildcard is going to update the Flying Kiwis transfer tracker that he's been doing most weeks on the email, most editions of the email, the dispatches. So tomorrow he'll do another breakdown of the Flying Kiwis transfer tracker. And I'm going to do a little breakdown of the New South Wales Rugby League SG Ball squads. Those are the under-19 squads named for round one of the SG Ball this weekend, obviously attacking it from the Kiwi NRL perspective. So I've already noted down some notable names that I see in those squads from Aotearoa, and tomorrow's email, the Friday email, will include a wider look at the Kiwi NRL presence in the SG Ball squads. We start our podcast, listeners and the wildcard, with a dose of mindfulness. Could you please share with us some mindfulness to ground ourselves, to help us get through today, maybe tomorrow, maybe until the next podcast?
Or just, get through the present moment, the eternal present moment. I was looking up, they had just when I was reading the Alan Watts book, one of the many little tangents that it took me along was this thing of like these Zen poems that they used to write in the, I don't know, several hundred years ago. I have no idea what the scope of them was. But I've been trying to find like a nice collection of them to find. I haven't, but I have at least got a couple on a website, and one that stood out from the pack here. Nice and simple. They're little 2-line things, so nothing too complicated. This one goes: sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, grass grows by itself. Nice and evocative, eh?
All right. First thing, it's quite similar to the one last week. So I kind of...
Which was? I can't remember.
It was the Zen, and not last week, the last podcast, it was the Zen and Monday, the lack of time.
Yeah.
So, because what you're talking about is kind of in a way, a distortion of time, or a different way of time playing out, is that time is just the seasons. Time is just the seasons come around to display a time of year. And you break that down in a monthly cycle. The full moon comes around, the new moon comes around to display a monthly, timely cycle. And then you bring it back down to the daily, sunrises, sunsets, and you've got time. So any time that I'm hearing time and season stuff together, I am reminded that the seasons are the time. And then you can break it down to a more granular daily level. And then also just that, because I might have shared with you actually how different things, they pop up as issues, as little niggly little issues. And then if our instinct is to act on that, and maybe that's the masculine energy, right? The right wing flapping round in circles, all that shit we've talked about. But there's been a few instances in my day-to-day life over the past few months where by doing nothing, the issue is fixed. So first of all, that's a more feminine energy. Now we're getting the left wing flapping and we're, cruising along with our two wings in a wobbly but a straight direction. But then also by doing nothing, things are arising like the grass growing. Like you don't need to do anything, but the flowers bloom. You don't need to do anything, but the rains of winter, they come and stuff like that. So it's also maybe a little bit of that feminine energy where you don't necessarily have to act to fix something. Things just might have a way of fixing themselves through your inaction.
Yeah, when you said the rains of winter, it made me think the rains of Castamere, and like it's not really sorting itself out there or fixing anything, but Game of Thrones deep dive there for anyone. I think the most important point from that is the idea that you don't have to, not only that you don't have to force it, but that you can't force it. Like things are just going to happen when they happen, and you can sit there quietly, do nothing, and be at peace, and the grass will grow. Or you can freak out and spend heaps of money on like, I don't know, liquid fertilizers and like bug killer and all this stuff and extra seeds and like the grass is still going to grow, might grow a little bit higher if you do all that. If you pump steroids into it, I don't know, but still going to grow one way or another. You don't have to freak out and get in an emotional turmoil about it all. You can just sit there, watch it as it watch the grass grow. I don't know, because like I tend to cycle through hobbies, right? Like I'll do one thing for a little while and one thing for another. I at the moment my hobby is trying to grow plants, and the main lesson you learn very quickly when you're trying to grow plants is that like people talk about not like you got to water your plants, right? You got to water them so that they can grow. But the thing that you don't necessarily hear as much, and it's always the first thing that you learn, is that you can overwater plants as well. And you overwater them because you're trying to water them every day because you're trying to spur on the process. You're trying to make things happen. But if you actually just like let them do their thing naturally and just water them every few days or whatever, depending on what the plant is, maybe every week or something, it'll happen normally. And it won't necessarily, like, these things aren't going to, little sprouts aren't going to shoot up into nice big, like, bushy plants within a week, but they might get there within a few months, and they're not going to happen any quicker. If you try to speed the process up, you're probably just going to kill them,
Which again is a very masculine way of operating.
Yeah, trying to take control of the natural process. Yeah,
you're trying to take control, through your good intentions of watering the plants. I'm giving the plants life by watering them every day, by caring for them every day. But that's the thing, is that you're doing that through your own control of this. Like, that is your control over the plant manifested, that I'm going to
drowning them in love.
As if the plant can't take care of itself, because the plant has its own systems for water retention and survival. But us with our masculine energy, we're like, nah. Don't worry, plant bro, I got you. I'm gonna grow you. You don't have to do anything. I'm gonna do it. But maybe as we're learning, I think Mother Nature and the natural elements are smarter than human beings.
And also human beings are part of Mother Nature and the natural processes. We're not like God standing above them who gets to dictate how things work. We're like integrated in the whole thing. We're part of the process.
Here's a good one. Nature is the God. We're not the God over nature. Nature is the God over us.
Mother
And with
Nature,
Papatūānuku,
divine feminine.
Papatūānuku, Ranganui, the Māori gods, it's all about nature. It's all about the natural elements. And with that wildcard, severe dose of mindfulness, fantastic. I can already feel myself just calming down here.
Which is timely.
Very timely. Folks, we have just had a White Ferns World Cup squad announced just prior to recording this podcast. And throughout this podcast, when we are talking about the White Ferns, I'm going to do my best to stay calm, to actually be about what we say here at the Niche Cast and the Niche Case with our mindfulness.
Quietly and watch the grass grow, or allow the grass to grow.
Well, see, Wildcat, I'm a human. I'm a flawed human, and I don't know if I can do that, right? Okay.
I'm a straight up.
I don't know if I can do that shit right now, Wildcard, because my systems are firing. Let's just say that. And I'm going to use this as an exercise to try and stay as calm as possible, to lay out the facts and not let my, because again, we're not here to celebrate ourselves as sports people, folks talking about sport. It's not about us here. Like, we are just the vessels for broadcasting Aotearoa sporting excellence, as we like to say. We interpret the shit, and we tell you our interpretations. Deal with those what you will, but it's not about us. It's only about Aotearoa sport. So that is a good entry point into me trying to strip away all the bullkaka involved here and just deal with facts, just deal with what is happening, and just, try and focus on the facts, because I believe the facts speak for themselves. So instead of me getting too emotive here, we can just let the facts speak for themselves. And we've got a White Ferns squad for the World Cup. Just got to decompress away from the mic here so we're not blowing into the mic. For those who don't know, since the start of 2019, Aotearoa's White Ferns have played 23 games. They have won 3 of those games. They have lost 20 out of their last 23 ODI games, and that is from the start of 2019. The big genius, almost Gavin Larson levels of cricketing genius, Coach Bob Carter. He took over from the White Ferns midway through 2019. So from the start of 2019, the White Ferns were 3-20. Bob Carter takes over, and the White Ferns are 2-15. So now we have a White Ferns team entering a home World Cup with a coach who has led the team to 2-15. In no way, shape, or form should the White Ferns be favourites for this World Cup. I believe a lot more people should be well aware that the White Ferns kinda suck in ODI cricket. But no one seems to care. No one, this gets me thinking, because we get quite a few views on like White Ferns writing, women's cricket writing. Our Twitter notifications are gone bonkers right now just because of women's cricket. People are interested in women's cricket. People like women's cricket. However, I don't know if people care about the White Ferns sucking. White Ferns sucking, sorry. The White Ferns being shit in ODI cricket. The White Ferns losing 15 out of their last 17 games. Do people care? Does anyone care? Because that's just how it is. Those are the facts. So it doesn't matter who's in the World Cup squad wildcard. The most important thing here is the White Ferns are entering their home World Cup with a 2-15 record under this coach. And what did I say? I said a 3-20 record since the start of 2019. Those are the most important bits of information. You got any like quick fire stuff you want to shoot out there based on those notes?
Not massively, other than just like I'm gonna at some point go and actually like look at all these results, so just to see it, because it seems like it's almost we can say what do you say, 3-20 and since the start of 2019, like that's 3 years worth of cricket, and 3 wins. They win one game per year. Like that's almost, I think, just when you hear the number, almost hard to like conceive the like the extremity of that. I want to actually like look at the results in a list and just be like loss, 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 or win, loss, loss, and actually like indulge in some of that. I might even tweet that out afterwards, actually, just to have a peek. But that's some crazy areas. I don't know why it isn't covered more often. I mean, I guess a lot of the focus has been on domestic cricket lately because of new broadcasting deals on Spark and stuff, and that's definitely been a big positive. And then maybe focusing on them losing a lot of ODIs, people just don't want to hear that right now because we're on this like boost of like trying to build up the sport and bring that positivity to the domestic game and then to the coverage of the of women's cricket in general. Maybe that's just something that's been conveniently brushed on the rug. I don't know, but World Cups tend to expose these kinds of things, is the worry.
So we had 3-20 since the start of 2019 for White Ferns cricket. The third leading wicket taker during this period was Lee Kasparek, who also happens to be the leading White Ferns wicket taker in 2021. And since the start of her and Amelia Kerr's careers back in 2015, 2016, Lee Kasparek has a better record than Amelia Kerr in ODI cricket. So we have the White Ferns leading wicket taker in 2021 first. We have the best ODI spinner from Aotearoa also. And we have the third leading wicket taker since 2019. Lee Kasparek was not selected. That is an escalation wildcard. You asked me prior to the recording, could the White Ferns stuff get any crazier? And I was quite adamant, not selecting Lee Kasparek. Lee Kasparek is the fucking most ridiculous thing I have literally ever seen in cricket. And in the time that we have started recording, I've got a good comparison. Not selecting Lee Kasparek is like selecting Adithya Ashok ahead of Ish Sodhi for a T20 World Cup at the end of this year. So we have the leading wicket taker in 2021, right? Lee Kasparek. We have the best spinner from Aotearoa, because everyone thinks Amelia Kerr's the best spinner. So if she's what we deem the best spinner, but Lee Kasparek's actually better than Amelia Kerr in ODI cricket, that makes Lee Kasparek Aotearoa's best ODI spinner. She has not been selected. Fran Jonas has been selected. Fran Jonas, who has played 2 ODI games, bowled 11 overs, has not taken a wicket and conceded 6.36 RPO. She has been selected ahead of the best White Ferns ODI spinner. There is no like logic. Like I just don't understand the decision. And that wildcard is so much more crazier than anything else has happened. And what else has happened is the White Ferns are 3-20 since the start of 19, and the leading women's one-day run scorer right now in Aotearoa is Kate Ibrahim. She is the only women's batter in the one-day competition who has scored over 300 runs. She is first in runs, averaging 82. Last summer, Kate Ibrahim, first in one-day runs, 480 runs at an average of 60. The last season she played before that, because she had a break for a baby, so her last 3 seasons she has averaged 82 this year, 60 last summer, and the summer she played before that, 86. She was not selected as well, so she is just straight up the best one-day batter in Aotearoa, kind of outside the White Ferns. She has been the best domestic one-day batter in Aotearoa, and she is not selected. That was already happening, and there was already a vibe that Kate Ibrahim was not going to be selected. So that was already like certain levels of crazy, because she is currently the best one-day batter in domestic cricket. Last summer, she was the best one-day batter in domestic cricket. And the season she had played before that, she scored 517 runs at an average of 82. So things were already crazy up until that point. And then somehow they found a way to go even crazier without Lee Kasparek, who again is the best ODI spinner from Aotearoa right now. You can, I need to take a break here, Wildcard. You can chime in.
Well, I'm just looking at their at the results since that 2019 start that you mentioned. They've played series against India, Australia, South Africa, Australia, England, Australia, and then England. And then starting at the beginning of 2019, it has gone lost, one, lost, one, lost, one, lost. Most recent being 4-1 loss, series loss away to England, and a 3-0 sweeping at home against Australia. I guess you could make the case that Amelia Kerr didn't play a fair bit of 2021. I think is like safe to say. She didn't go on that England tour, did she? At least. So Kasparek would have been elevated a little bit in her absence. And then also there's the argument to say that, well, Kasparek might have also benefited from being the second spinner at times when Kerr was doing well, and then coming in and picking up wickets. And you see this often. But then also that's not a reasoning for not picking her, because it says that she bowls well in tandem with Amelia Kerr, who is a Wellington teammate of hers as well. So that in general is kind of crazy, especially when you because Fran Jonas effectively got that selection ahead of her, right? And Fran Jonas probably isn't even the next best spinner, at least from what we saw in the Super Smash. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, and that takes us further down the rabbit hole into the talent identification stuff that I have.
Better leave a breadcrumb trail so we can find our way back out.
So yeah, throughout all of this, right? So everything we've discussed up to this point, throughout all of that, I've also been sharing and broadcasting the woeful record of New Zealand cricket and identifying the best female cricketers in Aotearoa, whether they be the best, or the best young players, with the development contracts, which I have broken down in various emails. I've done a big old proper yarn at the niche-case.com about White Ferns talent identification. I believe I make a strong case that this is a very flawed setup, that they are not good at what they are doing as far as talent identification goes. So that is all evident and that's all present. And then we have all this other stuff, which is incredibly weird for a sports organization to be so outlandishly flagrant in their weirdness. And I'd like to throw this quote from the legend, the cricketing genius, Bob Carter, in the White Ferns announcement. It's been a pleasure working with this group for an extended period of time. We've had this pinnacle event on our radar for a while, and I know that the whole squad has put in a lot of work to get to this point. We feel we have the best 15 players in the country and are ready for the challenge ahead. So it's a lie. This is not the best 15 players in Aotearoa, because I've just said Kate Ibrahim is the best one-day domestic batter in Aotearoa over the last 3 seasons she has played. So we can get into the nitty-gritty of why these players aren't selected and all these little bits and pieces. But again, I'm just trying to deal in facts. So when you tell me we feel we have the best 15 players in the country, that's not true. So what's happening? And you've decided to do that for a home World Cup where a lot of people seem to think that the White Ferns are going to do well at this World Cup. there's a bit of hype, there's a bit of buzz. Like New Zealand cricket's like PR department, as we've seen with the men's stuff and their how they can avoid criticism is pretty impressive. Like, let's be honest, like they do a fantastic job of it.
Good at what they do, yeah.
And this squad announcement's going to go down funky. Like everyone's going to be, yeah, the White Ferns, like, yeah, home World Cup, like kia kaha the wahine, yeah. But you're doing a disservice to the home World Cup. You're doing a disservice to the best wahine cricketers in Aotearoa by being so flagrant with your selections. It's very strange, and it's actually, it's not strange. It's not weird, because it's all in alignment, right? Like there was this trend of the White Ferns around 2015, 2016, 2017, coming into 2018, the White Ferns were competing with Australia. The White Ferns were competing with England. The White Ferns were competing with India, and they were part of a big four. They were far ahead of South Africa. They were far ahead of West Indies. The White Ferns were one of the best women's cricket teams in the world. Then they started losing a bit more. All right, so we're tuning in. Yeah, now I'm really starting to cover women's cricket in an in-depth fashion. I'm learning. And at the time that I'm learning, the White Ferns are also losing more games. Okay, so the White Ferns are losing more games. Cool. Note that away. Okay, the White Ferns' best players are also, their stats are declining. Their production's declining. That's a bit strange. Okay. Hope they can fix it. Okay. The White Ferns are losing. Their best players aren't doing well. What else is happening? There's a lot of other players in the White Ferns squads that are averaging single digits in ODI cricket. Okay, there are White Ferns who are consistently earning selection by averaging 8 in T20 cricket. White Ferns are earning consistent selection, averaging 10 in ODI cricket. Bowlers are earning consistent selection without actually taking wickets. Okay, so that's happening. So you've got the White Ferns are losing a few more games. The best players are declining in production. The role players are not capable, or they are, here's a better way of saying it. The White Ferns environment is not bringing the best out of new players, young players, role players, and is also seeing the best players decline. Okay, yeah, just still learning, and I'm sharing this stuff, and it's all happening. Okay, now New Zealand cricket unleashes these development contracts, 6 development contracts every year. Those are apparently the best young players worthy of a development contract. We've been down this rabbit hole. We don't actually know what a development contract means, but New Zealand cricket are telling us we've got 6 young players who deserve a development contract. Okay, cool. Those players don't get better. Those players are getting worse, and they are quite simply not the best domestic players in Aotearoa. We've seen that with Wellington. All the young players that Wellington bring through, no development contracts. We've seen that now with the Otago Sparks. Some of the best young cricketers in Aotearoa, one of them has had a development contract. Okay, that's happening. While that's happening, the White Ferns are losing even more games. Okay, so the White Ferns are losing even more games. Okay, that also coincides with 2 White Ferns taking time away from cricket for personal well-being. Respect to them. Like, no dramas with that. Doesn't necessarily reflect well on the White Ferns. If your team is losing and 2 of your best players are taking time away from cricket for their personal well-being, like, whatever ideas we want to throw out, quite simply, it doesn't reflect good on the White Ferns situation or their environment. Now we have this World Cup squad that actually feels, again, in alignment with all the other bulkaka noted. And if anything, it is a climax. We have reached the top of the mountain. We're at the top of Ruapehu of absolute bulkaka. That's a good one. The Ruapehu of bulkaka. I like that. And that's where we are now, wildcard. And I don't know about you,
title.
but when you reach the top of a mountain, you exhale and you're like, calm. Okay, cool. Here we are. I'm above the clouds. I'm looking out top of Ruapehu. I can see Lake Taupo over there. I can see the Sky Tower even. Holy fuck. I can see the southern Alps from the top of Ruapehu. Obviously, we need a southern breeze for the clear skies and all that shit. Like, yeah, like, and maybe I have a telescope or binoculars, cool. But I can see a long way because I got clear vision. I'm calm at the top of the mountain. I made it to the peak. And that's where I am right now, Wildcard, because I believe this is a fascinating tale in sport, in Aotearoa sports, because all of everything that I've explained, Wildcard, and I'm very sorry for just absolutely rambling on here, but everything I'm saying, I'm tried to be as fact driven, as common sense driven, driven by logic. I'm trying to interpret statistics. I'm trying to interpret my own observations of domestic female cricket in Aotearoa. I actually watch Women's Super Smash, as many games as I can. I'm there with Halliburton Johnson scorecards. Like, I actually invest my time in women's cricket to learn about women's cricket. And I've been on that journey while everything's been happening. I'm confident in my observations. I'm a bit like ESPN with Adam Schefter reporting of Tom Brady. You know, like, I'm confident in my reporting. I'm confident in my sources. I'm here right now telling you I'm confident in my observations. I'm confident in my interpretations, my notes about this situation. Also, I might be really dumb. I might just not get it. I might just be a silly old bugger who doesn't know what the fuck's going on with women's cricket in Aotearoa. There is only one way to find out, Wildcat. And that is this home World Cup. And that's why I'm calm. That's why I'm like chilling out at the top of Ruapehu, been on the journey through the, you know, the Ruapehu trail of bullkaka. Here I am. I'm calm. I'm cool. I'm collected. And I'm like fascinated by what happens at the World Cup. Yes, it might, like, there is some validation involved there. Like, it might validate me, or it might validate the New Zealand cricket selection stuff and just everything they are doing. So that's obviously part of the bias involved here. But more than anything, it's a fascinating experiment of, again, personally, my interpretation of women's cricket and the situation, but also nothing else like this exists in Aotearoa sport, where the perception of the White Ferns and the reality of the White Ferns are two very different things. And that is an interesting situation in men's sport. It's amplified in women's sport because we love women's sport just as we like men's sport. As much as we like men's sport, we try to cover women's sport just as much as we cover men's sport. Hence, what's our time here, Wildcard? We have done just over like 30 minutes or so talking about the White Ferns, right? That's what we do. We enjoy women's sport as much as men's sport. They're in very different places though. And I'm kind of curious to see how people react to this White Fern stuff, given how cozy people want to be with women's sport, how cozy people want to be with the White Ferns for their own credentials to the World Cup games, to get into the media room and, you know, have a little feed, a bit of kai, watch some women's cricket, you know, get like those cozy relationships in the very small Aotearoa sporting circle. I believe that plays into the perception and the reality stuff. And we've joked about it, I think, a few times, especially the last podcast when we did the like Black Ferns and All Blacks, whatever they are. Compare the White Ferns to the Black Ferns. Once again, there's a bit of drama with the Black Ferns right now. They weren't so good on the end of year tour last year. And there's a bit of drama just with the coach and his maybe lack of empathy and understanding of the Wahine athletes that he coaches. Bit of drama there, right? All of that drama should be associated to the White Ferns. So everything that you're kind of seeing around the Black Ferns in the media, any like slither of like, what the fuck is this? Like, what, this team was losing. There's like The coach is a bit of a dick by all, like whatever it is, whatever notes that you're observing. Do you see any of that stuff with the White Ferns? No. And this just like now we're moving away from the Ruapehu Kaka trail, and we're getting into a boil up. You got the big pot there, probably got some crayfish boiling up. You got some veggies, like whatever you're boiling up. Whether you want to go gumbo style, whether you want to go just like bone broth style, whatever you're boiling up, we now have a boil up of the Home World Cup and everything associated with the White Ferns going into it. And I'm calm at the top of this Ruapehu Kaka trail, and I'm heading back down Wildcard. I'm heading back down, and I'm going to find that boil up, and I'm going to taste that boil up, and I'm going to see how it tastes. I'm going to, bask in the aromas, the flavors, the complexity of flavors, the texture, whatever it is. I'm going to enjoy that boil up, and that boil up is the World Cup. Don't know how that boil up's going to taste, but at the top of Ruapehu, after wading through all the bullkaka, here I am, calm, cool, collected. The facts are obvious. Common sense feels really easy to touch and access. Now I've got to head back down Ruapehu. I'm going to take a different trail. I'm not going down Ruapehu through the bullkaka. We're going down the beautiful track. The beautiful track down Ruapehu to where the boil up awaits, and we'll deal with that boil up when it comes.
The metaphors have been outstanding in this episode so far. So the World Cup has 8 teams with a group stage where everyone just plays each other once, and then the top 4 go through the semifinals and then finals. Like, it's a pretty simple format. The White Ferns will be expected to make the semifinals, and if they make the semifinals, they'll probably play either England or Australia and probably lose. And if that happens, like, they get through, finish 3rd or 4th in the group, lose a game where maybe they're in it in the first innings and then sort of like outclass in the second innings, and they go down relatively valiantly, but in a game where they always kind of felt like they were behind. I don't think anyone notices the boil up in that situation. I don't think there's any boil over from the boil up. That's potentially the most likely scenario. Where it gets frisky is if they lose a group stage game to South Africa or India or, West Indies, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Because if they do that, suddenly they might not make the semifinals. If they miss the semifinals, I think that gets focused. I think then you are in a situation where it's like, well, you should be one of the top 4 teams in the world. You traditionally have been one of the top 4 teams in the world. You're hosting the World Cup and you didn't make the semifinals. That looks terrible. That's where you get a little bit of boil over stuff happening. I have 2 other comparisons I might make, but I might throw that back to you just on like because I did ask you on a variety show a little while back, what are your expectations? And you pretty much said like semifinals is about what they should be targeting and probably what they'll do. But a 3-23 record over the 3 years leading up to a World Cup, including, losing series, they got swept at home 2 years ago by, like this time 2 years ago, they got swept 3-0 at home by South Africa. They've lost a series to England in that. They've lost a couple to England. They've lost one to India in that time as well. So there's absolutely no guarantee that they would beat teams like South Africa or India. In which case, probably ought to get a vibe check from yourself here on how you actually feel about performance levels going into, like, not performance levels going into it, but like performance levels when we actually get into the World Cup.
First of all, you went from boil up to boil over, which was
the boil up, boiling over.
Yeah, the boiling up.
Leave it on hot for too long, and the broth starts spilling over the side. Yeah,
indeed. Okay, so you're opening up like a whole. I'm pretty sure that like through women's cricket, through the White Ferns, maybe it's a left wing feminine energy type of thing, but like I'm a bit like an onion in that regard, because if we're you know, doing the Shrek, we're pulling back the layers of the onion.
Right, okay, gotcha.
With women's cricket, and it's kind of like it's, to me, I'm the onion. So you're pulling back the layers and you're kind of working through my emotions. And for some reason, with the White Ferns over the last few years, I have like, it's been a fascinating emotional journey for me. Like, not anything like fucking weird or crazy. It's just like, when I write about the White Ferns, I feel terrible because I'm writing how shit they are. And it sucks. Like, I'm like, this team sucks. Like, in my emotional state, I'm like, this team sucks. Selections suck. Everything fucking sucks. Am I like delusional? Like, because I'm the only person saying this shit. Like, so it's all an emotional experience. And part of that wild card is that I love some of these White Ferns. I love women's cricket in Aotearoa, like Susie Bates, amazing. Like Sophie Devine, what an absolute freakish athlete. Like, she is amazing. You've got Amy Satterthwaite and Leah Tahuhu, who have somehow got better since having a baby. Like, they were already world-class cricketers. They had a baby together. Now they're better. Like, wow. Then you have Amelia Kerr, the young prodigy who is basically the female version of Steve Smith. Gets her chance bowling leggies and develops into one of the best batters in the world. Like, Amelia Kerr is the female version of Steve Smith, and that is fantastic. Jess Kerr, part of the Wellington development system, part of the Kerr family whānau excellence, fantastic bowler. Now she's one of the best hitters in the world. Like, amazing, fantastic. Katie Martin, ball of personality, absolute soldier of women's cricket, behind the stumps. She's one of the few female cricketers who can play like a fantastic sweep shot. And like, it's just all amazing. Like, these players, you know, I don't need to go down the rabbit hole of just like finding so much like joy in watching women's Super Smash, where you've got, you know, just fun, vibrant cricketers doing what they love to do. The whole experience of getting like Eden Carson on the mic is so different to having one of the blokes on the mic in the men's Super Smash. Like, the whole environment's different. Like, it's just, for some reason, I love it. Like, I love women's cricket and I love the White Ferns. Like, these White Ferns are some of my favorite athletes ever in the world. And I say that wild card because if those White Ferns are at the best of their abilities, the White Ferns can win the World Cup. Like, Sophie Devine is so good that if Sophie Devine is on fire throughout this World Cup, the White Ferns can win the World Cup. Like, maybe it's Sophie Devine just purely on fire and then solid performance from the rest of those world-class White Ferns. Maybe it's all the world-class White Ferns playing near the best of their abilities, right? Like, you can mix and match with that combination, but those players are good enough to win the World Cup for Aotearoa.
And they're all available at the moment for the first time in about 3 years. There's always been one missing.
Yeah. Bates with the shoulder injury. Devine taking a break. Amelia Kerr took a break. Satterthwaite and Tahuhu. Like, Tahuhu's been often injured. They had a kid together. It's all, like, they're all healthy, they're all fit, they're all ready to go, and I want them to win the World Cup because they deserve it. Like, it's just so cool, and it'll be fantastic. It'll be amazing to like just see Susie Bates, Devine, Martin, those like veterans of women's cricket having that moment in Aotearoa. It'll be amazing. It'll be awesome. And getting back to the expectations, like, the crazy thing is that's a very legit possibility. So I'm trying to process that as well. And that's part of the emotional package, is like all this bullshit's happening. And then at the same time, there's that wrinkle of like hope or optimism where it's like, whoa, maybe Susie Bates just goes to a whole neck level. Right? Like, maybe instead of batting Sophie Devine in the middle order, you might get Susie Bates and Sophie Devine opening the batting. Sophie Devine just goes nuts, reinvents women's cricket because she's hitting fucking 70 off 30 deliveries at the start of an ODI game, and then she'll just come in and take 2 or 3 wickets every game. Maybe all that shit happens and they win the World Cup. Maybe it's fantastic. Also, there's a lot of bad juju around. So again, we could just working through this onion. There's all that positive, cool shit. But there's, for everything we've explained, there's a lot of bad juju around this team. And something in my gut is telling me that there is going to be an escalation of bad juju. Like, it just doesn't seem realistic to hope that the best White Ferns dominate when they have been declining in form under Bob Carter, first and foremost. But then also, if you're saying we feel we have the best 15 players in the country, but you don't, that's a lot of weird energy to put out into the universe. You know, like, that's a lot of bad juju that you're partaking in. And that's just one little thing. There is a lot of bad juju swirling around the White Ferns as well. And that's a weird feeling as well.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those, like, if you're saying this thing and it's clearly wrong because Lee Casbrook isn't there and, you know, Kate Abraham isn't there, etc., then what else are you wrong on? And that's a kind of an important thing to be wrong on as well, because you're talking about talent identification. And if you can't spot that, then what other mistakes are you making in terms of, like, other players who deserve to be there? But another common trend of the last 3 years where they've been losing, playing players in the wrong positions, like chucking Frankie Mackay down at 8 or whatever, and you know, things like that. That's been a commonality as well, especially through the Bob Carter era. Bob Carter, father of Leo Carter from Canterbury, I found out as well. Interesting factoid for people. Yeah, like, those seem to go hand in hand. If you're not necessarily picking the best available players, which doesn't always have to be the case, because if you're trying to fit a team around an 11, sometimes some players are too similar to each other, and you don't need everyone. You need the variety of players to fit the style of cricket, or whatever sport we're talking about that you're trying to play. It's just that they don't really seem to have a style at the moment, because when they have done well, and it's been more 2020 than ODIs recently, it's generally been on the back of a you know, one of the big five just winning player of the day and being amazing and leading the team and carrying everyone else. That's generally how they win cricket. It's not like they have like a strategy that says this is our identity as a team. It's like, identity is just, we'll let our best players carry us. Those things go a little bit hand in hand and are not necessarily good indications. But that's why the two comparisons that I was thinking of through all this, one is the Black Caps, one is the Football Ferns. The Black Caps one is because the Black Caps have got really good, having gone through similar weird selection-y type things. The last Champions Trophy was probably the low point there, where it just felt like, and they were a good team before that, especially in ODI cricket. Like, they made a couple. That Champions Trophy was after the World Cup final in 2015, and they'd made a couple of semi-finals before that. Like, they were a good, solid team with some very good players, but they were also just not as good as they should have been, not as consistent as they should have been, because they were making odd selections, like trying to find another Brendan McCullum after Brendan McCullum retired. Like, you're not going to get in. Like, he's a unique cricketer. He's a definition of a unique cricketer. There's a few of those around in the world at any time. You don't find guys who can do that same job again. You got to find, like, you got to go with the Brendan McCullum strategy, what he did as a captain, of just empowering players to be their natural selves rather than trying to mold another Brendan McCullum. And it took them a little while to get around to that, but they did, and they've got to the point where, like, they're now an excellent team in every format. Making the final of each of the last 3 World Cup events in 2020, but in each of the 3 formats. I don't know what it is that got them through that, though, other than the fact that they had a really strong leadership core within the team, players coming into their peak, just enough good players that there weren't decisions to be made about things. And then you got to be a little bit, I guess being a winning team as well solves a lot of problems, because you're not having to look for answers. You have time to adapt and to allow players to get used to and you can bring guys in and out into a performing team and know that they don't have to be amazing or the team is going to lose. They can just do what they do, and the team is probably going to go pretty well around them, and then they're just free to do whatever they do. Debut with 50s like Daryl Mitchell or Glenn Phillips, or to do what Kyle Jamison's done since coming into the Test team, like things like that. It's easier with a winning team, and they got there because they had a good, strong, consistent lineup. The White Ferns have the makings of that with the star players that they have. If they get to a point over the next couple of years, ideally, where those players are good enough to win them games, and you can make things work around that, and then build through to where you have a better understanding of the team. You're not searching for answers and making risky selections and things like that. The Football Ferns are a good comparison, because I think they've been in a similar scenario, probably more about 5 years ago, to where the White Ferns are at the moment, where, again, like, good, solid core of players. Most of your first 11 takes care of itself. Beyond that, it gets a little bit weird in filling out the last couple spots, because there just isn't necessarily... With the Football Ferns, I think it's more about depth, and they have that issue that they've had for a long time, where it's like they're too good for the region that they compete in, and not good enough for the tournaments that they qualify automatically for. So, like, they've had to go searching for answers in that same way we're talking about with the White Ferns, where you're not necessarily picking the best players. You might be picking a lot of younger players who aren't ready for this occasion yet. Like, they're just not good enough yet, but you've identified that they will be in a few years, and want to give them these experiences to help them to help fast track them. And a lot of that didn't work. Like, there are players who come and go and disappear, I think, or players who are, good, solid prospects, but don't ever get that far better. But the Football Ferns feel like they're on a different track now, though. And I think the reason for that, as much as anything, is they've kind of the simple answer is to say they've just got more professional players now than ever before. And if you're playing professionally, which is something up until the Wellington Phoenix came around anyway, and even then the Wellington Phoenix are based in Australia, so it's still kind of true at the moment. To play professional as a Kiwi women's footballer, you have to move overseas, which brings it back to the idea of how did New Zealand football get their Football Ferns more competitive, and they're still not at the point where they're winning games consistently or anything, or being able to beat teams that are better than them. They're hopefully getting towards that. There've been some good signs recently, but definitely you don't see so many you actually have seen crazy bolter selections recently, but that's because players have been unavailable and they haven't had a choice. They've had to pick players out of USA colleges simply because they have to pick someone. And a couple of those players have done really well too. So, but effectively, they've outsourced player development. That's what's worked for them. They've outsourced player development. They've got other clubs and professional environments to do that for them. And it's so much if you're being paid to play football, obviously you're going to be a lot better because you're able to train. You don't have to do a day job and just train in your weekends when you're tired and exhausted and whatever. You can actually commit yourself to it. Obviously it's going to be much better. They did create and New Zealand football had a big hand in the Wellington Phoenix team getting in as well. So that's part of it. But also a couple of years ago, they created the Football Ferns, or the Future Ferns development program, which similar to these New Zealand cricket development contracts, not necessarily the best players. There were always a few players where it's there's someone clearly better than that person right now, but it was a relatively full-time trying to imitate a professional environment type thing based in Auckland. So, for example, best domestic team in women's football for the last 5, 6, 7 years has been Canterbury. There's several Canterbury players who just have never been a part of that Future Ferns development program because they'd have to move to Auckland and away from their lives and everything like that. But the Ferns development program has been very good at getting players from it serves the purpose in and of itself, but I think its even deeper purpose is that they've been very active in trying to get players on professional contracts overseas, and there've been a lot of players doing that. Unfortunately, it's not an option for cricket, though. Is the only problem with the White Ferns is you can't really do that because there isn't you don't have that global sport football thing where there's just professional leagues all over the world. You've only got a couple of countries that take cricket as like more seriously than we do, and just don't. I mean, the one exception to that, well, there's probably two exceptions because you could go to England and do some good stuff, but the Women's Big Bash in Australia has been very like good formative experiences for a couple players. They just don't. Like what happened last season was Sophie Devine was the only active White Ferns player there, wasn't she? That's not really like New Zealand cricket have sort of seemed, and the same with the men's thing, kind of blocked, not specifically blocked Big Bash from being an option for players, but have kind of gotten in the way with scheduling with Super Smash and things like that. So I don't know if you see any answers to all that from that.
I see immense clarity, but like none of what you said, like it's all true, and I'll get to that, but none of it doesn't really matter. It doesn't like where New Zealand cricket, like how they develop those players, it doesn't matter. What matters is that Daryl Mitchell enters the Black Caps and immediately scores runs. Will Young enters the Black Caps, and we'll segue into Ford Trophy and some football here because we've done almost an hour on the White Ferns. Will Young steps into the Black Caps, immediately scores runs. Kyle Jamieson steps into the Black Caps, immediately takes wickets. Tom Blundell comes into the Black Caps, one of the few Kiwi batsmen to score runs in Australia. What do all those dudes have in common? They've played at least 6 or 7 years of domestic cricket. Okay, then we go to your Football Ferns example. Yeah, these players might be younger and less experienced, but they have professional experience.
Yeah.
So what we parlay that into the White Ferns, the players of those type of players are not selected. Kate Ibrahim is a plug and play cricketer. You could put her anywhere in that White Ferns lineup, and she is better equipped than many of the younger players for a World Cup situation. Lee Kasprick is one of the best spinners in the world, and you've gone the other direction. You've gone with a player who hasn't even taken a wicket in her 2 games this year. So that's the difference. The White Ferns are selecting players with minimal professional experience for a home World Cup, which is in direct contrast with what is working for the Black Caps. The Black Caps are getting the best out of their players because their players are coming to the Black Caps as the best version of themselves. We've seen it with Ajaz Patel. Ajaz Patel can go to India and take 10 wickets in an innings because Ajaz Patel is a fucking craftsman who has put in the effort to master his craft and did that after turning 30, like a couple years after turning 30, right? Like all these Black Caps that we love that have propelled the Black Caps to the best team in the world across the 3 formats, these are all players who come into the Black Caps the best version of themselves. Those players in women's cricket are neglected. And that's why the White Ferns are 2-20. That's why the White Ferns kind of suck heading into a home World Cup. Let's cheer it up here and go into the Ford Trophy wildcard, because the bloke I just mentioned, Will Young, is fucking churning out the runs. Ford Trophy century against Auckland. And I think a lot of people overlooked this. The 2-test series against Bangladesh, Devon Conway, player of the series, centuries in both tests. Tom Latham, big old knock himself. Will Young, Black Caps test opener, 350s in a row. Like that's kind of good. Especially
pretty good. It's pretty good.
Especially after your first test knock in India. I think he scored like an 80 odd. We go back earlier. He scored runs in the test in England against England. And before that, he scored back-to-back county championship centuries for Durham. So if we look at the stretch of batting for Will Young, that I actually think he hasn't played much cricket. He did play in that Bangladesh T20 series, so those games are included here. But like his last 10 games of cricket stretches back to that Bangladesh T20 series. So since then, he had the test versus India, played 4 tests in a row, 2 tests against India, 2 tests against Bangladesh, 4 tests in a row, and that is 7 innings of batting, and Will Young passed 50 in 4 of those innings. Comes back to the Super Smash 23, and then he scores 107 in the Ford Trophy. So shout out Will Young. We sees you. We sees you scoring these runs. Like, you're scoring a lot of runs, and fantastic. Something else I want to just throw up here, wildcard, is Adithya Ashok. Again, let's go back to that White Ferns thing. Like, would you select Adithya Ashok for the T20 World Cup ahead of Mitchell Santner or Sodhi? No, it doesn't make much sense. That's what the White Ferns do. But Ashok is in fantastic form. And I just want to, like, we don't need to go too specific on it, but Adithya Ashok didn't take too many wickets. I think his first 2 Ford Trophy games back at the height of the Super Smash didn't take any wickets. Then he started getting a lot of Super Smash game time, started taking wickets, and comes back into the Ford Trophy, took wickets against Central, dismissed Ross Taylor. Ross Taylor went for a late cut, caught behind. And Adithya Ashok is taking a lot of wickets, but Auckland, I think it was 3 out of their 4 last Super Smash games they lost, and they've also lost a string of their most recent Ford Trophy games. So there's this idea where you've got, Lockie Ferguson's consistently dominant. He is fantastic as well. We expect that. Then you've got Adithya Ashok, who is bowling really well for a struggling Auckland team. And there are Aucklanders scoring runs, like George Worker's got 2 centuries in the Ford Trophy. Martin Guptill had a very slow 50 against Central. You've got these guys like Glenn Phillips, who hasn't scored many runs this summer, and Mark Chapman, who does have a Ford Trophy century. They're all doing bits and pieces, but point A, they are not doing Will Young bits and pieces as Black Caps batsmen in domestic cricket. And Auckland are right now they are a losing team. And their highlights are Lockie Ferguson and Adithya Ashok, which is kind of bonkers. Adithya Ashok's sizzling form right now as the fresh young leggy.
Got Ross Taylor out the other day too, so chuck that one on the highlight reel in the career memories folder. He's a tidy little bowler, right? And he's got something that I think is a little bit like, he does have a point of difference to Santner and Sodhi as well. So there is a possibility of I don't think he'd ever be selected ahead of those two, who are world-class players, but I could see him. Well, he's definitely a lot skiddier than Sodhi, and he's a leg spinner who turns the ball a bit nicely. I mean, Sodhi has a point of difference to most leg spinners, because most leg spinners are quite skiddy, aren't they? Like, his height does put him, set him apart from a lot of other players doing his kind of thing, for better and for worse, because it means he catches a lot of top edges. It also means he can get tonked around a bit, but then that's the case for every leg spinner. Leg spinners and art is a boom and bust.
I've actually thought about this, because Santner and Sodhi are quite tall. And this isn't necessarily, when you're watching cricket on TV, you don't realize that, if you're a right-hander and you've got Ish Sodhi bowling a short-pitched wrong-in into your pads, it's not easy to play, because he's tall, he's getting bounce, and these dudes get a lot of rip on the deliveries. So if he's bowling a wrong-in, he's getting extra bounce and it's angling in at you.
Yeah.
So a lot of these deliveries, yes, the flip side is you can, because a lot of these plans are to cramp up the batsman. Mitchell Santner will bowl his in-swinger or his arm ball, and just stuff like that, where, especially at that UAE World Cup, the whole thing was, back of a length, skidded on, that type of stuff. And we saw in the Super Smash, a lot of spinners were successful when they delivered the ball hard into the pitch. So you're not bowling a bouncer, but you're hitting the deck as opposed to kind of floating it up. And because I have thought about Ashok and his forecasting future projections and all of that stuff, and that just made me realize how unique Santner and Sodhi are.
Yeah, for sure.
because they're taller than most spinners, but they're just as skillful as every other spinner. In the same way that Ravi Ashwin might be, right? Like in Test cricket. First of all, he's got all the variations, but then also he's got a different height angle.
Also very tall. Yeah.
Than like an Ajaz Patel or an Adithya Ashok or a Adam Zampa. I don't know. Imran Tahir. Fuck it. Just names coming into mind. But yeah, I go back. Yeah. So like, I think there is this thing where you can watch Santner or Sodhi bowl and think like, fuck, just like toss one up, like just rip a leggy or a lefty. But also, how hard is it to, like, this is why they are successful. This is one I'm explaining. They are successful because they actually utilize their height as well as everything else. And I think utilizing their height is something we overlook as fans, as like how hard it is to hit boundaries, hit sixes when the delivery is coming from an awkward height, which from two bowlers who grew up in Aotearoa, who grew up in conditions where they have this bounce as well, but also the amount of rip they get on the delivery, you're getting a bit of kick. You're getting a bit of like oomph off the pitch as well. So I don't know if they're going back to the original point again. Fuck, just feel like I'm waffling on. So sorry for interrupting, but you said like what sets like Ashok apart. Maybe like pretty good batsman by the looks of it. Good fielder as well. So that total package might set him apart from other spinners. I don't know if he's got anything super unique though. Whereas if you directly compare him to Sodhi has, apart from years of experience, he's got a different like angles. He's got different angles to work with. Whereas Ashok is more stereotypical spinning size, maybe. I don't know, like if that's a thing. But I say that because he just looks like a fantastic cricketer as opposed to someone who's got a completely unique package. Super interesting comparison might be Adithya Ashok. Shout out to Adithya Ashok, who I think was a Olympic medalist with Lydia Ko at the Tokyo Olympics, representing India, female LPGA golfer. Her name is Adithya Ashok. So shout out to her. Also shout out to Adithya Ashok, who, what do you think about this comparison with wildcard? Ashok versus Ravindra. Because I like Ashok's batting. I think Ashok, like, fair play. He's a rookie with the aces. He's not going to bat up the order. But I think Ashok could be a pretty decent 6 or 7. And like, we've already walked through the Ravindra experience, and there's no certainties about his like immediate Black Caps future over the next 12 months. A name to chuck out to further clutter those matters is Ashok, I reckon.
Yeah, I'd also add on Santner a unique delivery action too. Is compared to others, he doesn't really have a front arm at all, which is different. The ball's coming out differently, and as we know, batsmen always talk about trying to pick the spin out of the hand and things like that. It's a complicating factor. Ravindra's future Black Caps thing, just in the short term, is cloudy, but it should be cloudy because it's not like he's come in and scored, hundreds and done Devon Conway things or Kyle Jamison things with wickets that he's taken or anything like that. He's just been a solid option as the last man picked in the test matches that he's played. Playing a kind of like bespoke position too, where it's that like, they sort of, he's an opening batsman by trade, and they're playing him as a bowling all-rounder. So, it's kind of a made to fit thing. There is talk that Kane Williamson won't have recovered in time for the South Africa series, which does make it interesting. And what do they do with the top order? Because it'll be the first time in about like 15 years or something they won't have had Kane Williamson or Ross Taylor in the middle order, which is going to be crazy. But I suspect, I don't know, because I think the easy thing to do would be to say, like, well, you just pick Ravindra and Mitchell, and you bat Mitchell a little bit higher up if you need to. I think he batted 3 in one of those India test matches, didn't he? The second one, or at some point he did anyway. Definitely.
Just in place of Williamson.
Yes, it was indeed. Which is different though, because that was with a touring squad. It's not like you could just pick up the cream of the crop of domestic cricket. You had to go with what you had there. I will say, I think just on the basis of what Ravindra has done so far, Mitchell is ahead of him for sure. And I sort of think you don't need an extra. You probably don't need a spinner at all. Because both tests are going to be in Christchurch now, aren't they? And I think it would be kind of harsh on fellas like Glenn Phillips is one who springs to mind, who has a test match 50 on debut and hasn't played against since. Like, I think it'd be kind of harsh on some of the like legit batsmen pushing through, putting hands up for test selection. If you then just pick a bunch of all-rounders in your middle order. So that is going to be an interesting one, how they go about that. Personally, I would have someone like Phillips in there and bat him at 4, slide, or what would you do? Probably Conway at 3, I guess, which means 1, 2, 3 with the lefties, but no dramas there. And then Nichols at 5. You could have Nichols at 3 if you wanted to give him a little tester. I don't know, but that top 5 is going to be interesting to see a team selected without Williamson, without Taylor, and I would hope they're thinking a little bit deeper in terms of specialist top 5 batsmen rather than trying to squeeze Mitchell and Ravindra in there as well, when maybe Ravindra is a top 5 batsman but hasn't necessarily locked on a spot or anything like that ahead of other candidates, and Mitchell just should be batting at 6, like no dramas.
I think Mitchell is perfect for number 4. And I think that is the best way to, because then you just leave everything else as it is. You got Latham, Young, Conway number 3, just slot Daryl Mitchell in for number 4. Henry Nichols stays number 5, go from there.
And you pick Ravindra in that scenario?
I don't know. Like, for some reason, I started thinking about Ajaz Patel while you're talking, but it's a long way away. Let's chill out on that.
It's 2 weeks. 2 weeks today, I think, is the first test.
Hey, we're zen. There is no time. We're just here and now.
We're liberated from time. We're liberato cacace from time.
Yeah, then you can't really select Ajaz and double bang at Hagley. That would be weird.
A bit rough on him in that case.
But yeah, but just the thing on Ashok, so just a better way of explaining his recent form. His last 10 games, the first 5 games of the last 10 games, he took 3 wickets. 1 wicket, 1 wicket, 1 wicket, 0 wicket, 0 wicket. And it's a mixture of one-day T20. Next 5 games, mixture of one-day and T20, 2 wickets, 3 wickets, 0 wickets, 3 wickets, 3 wickets. So he went from taking 3 wickets in 5 games to taking 11 wickets in 5 games. The only thing that really changed, Auckland started losing more games. So don't know what's doing there. But we do also have, we got a Plunkett Shield game starting tomorrow. We have Auckland versus Northern Districts. Lots of Black Caps will be on display there. And obviously they are playing because Auckland are yet to play a Plunkett Shield game. Northern have played 2. So the next 3 Plunkett Shield games all feature Auckland. So 2 of those will be played in Auckland. One starting tomorrow, so check that out if you're in Auckland. Then Auckland have another game in Auckland on the 3rd of March. Ford Trophy is also tomorrow. We have Wellington versus Canterbury, and we have Otago versus CD. One would imagine we'll get a bit of Ross Taylor again for CD. Just running like straight off the top of the dome. Wellington, we've got the Fennellan situation. Can he bat outside T20? We've got the Rachin Ravindra stuff. Tom Blundell might need some runs. Troy Johnson has 4 50s in 5 innings, I believe. Keep an eye on him. Canterbury, obviously got the big dogs, Tom Latham, Daryl Mitchell, Henry Nichols. Henry Nichols didn't play in the last few Super Smash games, which probably had to be due to some sort of injury. Maybe he just wanted to kick back. I don't know. Otago kind of sucked in the Super Smash, and a 2-2 in the 4 trophies. So they're going all right. And then we've got the CD, obviously, Will Young scoring runs as well. So lots of domestic cricket happening, which is beautiful. And we will, I wrote about the 4 trophy yesterday, recap these games on Saturday as well. Any little bits and pieces you want to discuss in domestic cricket there, wildcard, before we venture into football?
Did you mention Halliburton Johnson Shield on Saturday as well? Bit of that going on too.
Is that starting up again?
I believe so. Haven't got the thing to
Saturday the 5th of February and Sunday. So of course, because Aotearoa Sport are the bastions of equality, Halliburton Johnson Shield can only be played on weekends because most of these chicks are working. And I'll recap all Halliburton Johnson and Shield stuff on Monday. So stay tuned for that. We do have a bit of the Ross Taylor angle here, wildcard. You mentioned that we've got like the first test without Williamson or Taylor for a while, and we are enjoying the Ross Taylor years. Funny situation. What's if Ross Taylor keeps scoring a shitload of runs for CD? Now, Halliburton Johnson Shield, we have Kate Ibrahim leading run scorer, and she might just go bonkers. She might just I don't know if she can go any extra bonkers than her last 3 seasons, but the type of competitor she is, I think she might be a fun player to watch. And Otago are playing against Wellington on Saturday, which I assume is a double header. Lee Kasprick will be playing for Wellington. So she will be eager beaver. And yeah, so just a good round. We've got Central hosting Auckland. We've got Northern hosting Canterbury, Otago hosting Wellington, all of which will be double headers Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, funky how that works. We let's play the same team twice back-to-back days. We had to do that in the football thing season before last, where they're like cramming in fixtures because this was the first COVID season. And they just decided when we had to play one team twice, they were just like, well, we'll play you once and it will just count for double points. So it's like 2 points each for a draw and 6 points for a win, which was dumb. And we lost anyway. But actually, that might have been the reserves team, and I was filling in because the Prems had already finished. I can't remember.
Can they do that for the Women's World Cup? Like, you don't have to play the semi-final. Just if you beat that team in pool play,
whoever won in group stage will
go straight through. Let's get in some football. We'll try and keep it to just an hour and a half here. So if you can confine it to 10 minutes or so, what do you want to I think we can do it a bit more interesting than you just doing your best White Ferns rant impression and rolling through Flying Kiwis transfers. Maybe the best way I can think to frame it is to ask you you gave me the vibe check, I'll give you the vibe check. How, because I imagine this window of Flying Kiwis transfer season is a bit different to how they have been in the past. And we are big lovers of Aotearoa Sport. And our big love for Aotearoa Sport is that our stuff has coincided with a complete change in Aotearoa Sport's culture, where the kids have far more options than rugby or netball. And Aotearoa is great at sports other than rugby and netball. And we are producing some of, the world's best athletes in so many different sports. And they are the biggest sports, the biggest sporting competitions in the world. And this is reflected in our rugby league coverage. It's reflected in our cricket coverage. It's reflected in Stephen Adams, Lydia Ko, basketball coverage, and of course football coverage, as evident in the Wall Whites, as evident in the Football Ferns, as evident in Wellington Phoenix female team. All these things are popping off. And I imagine the vibe was very different for this Flying Kiwis transfer window, wildcard. Can you just maybe share with us how it was different to previous years? Maybe if you want to go behind the curtain, what were you doing? Were you the last few kind of main Flying Kiwis transfer periods, you were okay, I can just remember this shit off the top of my head. Okay, yeah, Kakache might be one to watch. Okay, this guy's mentioned him. Might go to Juventus. Who knows? Cool, fantastic. Now suddenly you've got like 20, 25, 30 different names that could be mentioned, and you've got to track all the different rumors. You've got to track all the different like possibilities. You've actually got to learn what their club situation is. So for each of these individual players, you've got to suss out what their current situation is, because that is going to impact how you cover their movements. Like for Joe Bell, it might be best for him to stay. Like, you've got to learn about each of these individual clubs kind of as well. So I imagine your process and the vibe was a bit different over the past, like maybe month and a bit.
Yeah. I mean, the keeping track of the club situations, I kind of do that anyway, just from the Flying Kiwis beat every week. Like, you get a bit of an idea for that. It's the trick is when like Kakache moves to Empoli or something like that, and I know what the situation is at St. Troiden. Like, I can tell you that's a team with like a Belgian Pro League team, sort of lower half of the table, not like flirted with relegation the couple years he was there, but always good enough to get away from it. Japanese owners, a lot of Japanese teammates, therefore, because they like to bring Japanese players over to give them a taste of European football and hopefully sell them on. Kakache was kind of like an offshoot of that, and like I can where sign him for a fairly hefty fee. We're talking something reportedly in the range of like 2/3 of $1 million New Zealand dollars that went to the Phoenix, or something along those lines. It's always disputed when it comes to transfer fees. Always reported, always estimates, always those kind of things. But an excessive fee for a player playing in the A League. Like, I can tell you that they did that because they're the type of club that brings players up and then sells them for more to a bigger club later on. Like, they're that kind of like pathway club. I can tell you all this stuff about the club that he was playing for. All of a sudden, he's rumored and then sold to Empoli within a few hours. And I've got to learn everything about Empoli in one day. It's tricky. And one thing that I missed was that looking at their left back that had been playing all their games, who's on loan from Sassuolo, did his ACL in their most recent game, but got his knee busted against Roma. So that's another reason why that transfer, because I was at the point where I was like, Kakache is probably not going to be sold. It seems like the main link before January was to Torino, which is where Matt Garbutt plays in the Primavera team, the under-19. So that would have been pretty awesome. But it's like nothing had come of that, at least in terms of rumors. And we're heading into the last day of the transfer season, last few days at least anyway. Felt like Kakache probably see it out till the end of the season and then see what happens after that. There's a reason that transfer came around so quickly. It's because like their starting left back busted his knee and they needed a new left back all of a sudden. Like that was on last weekend that happened. Not last weekend, because last weekend was international break, but it was the 23rd, I think it was. He busted his knee. They wouldn't have got like the doctor's reports back for a couple of days after that as well. I would imagine you'd had to have scans and all that. So we're talking short term, like less than a week to work that thing. I did find a great quote from their sporting director, I think, afterwards, talking about the Kakache transfer, breaking it down a little bit, which I got somewhere. But the vibe check idea, like, I think I can summarize that in one word, which would be quantity. Like, we've had Kakache going to STVV before. We've had, Ryan Thomas to PSV. We've had Chris Wood to Burnley once upon a time, with back when, the only transfer fee that's ever been paid for a Kiwi footballer that's bigger than the one that Chris Wood, gathered to go to Burnley is the one that Chris Wood gathered to go to Newcastle from Burnley. So, like, we've had the headline act kind of thing, and a few transfer windows, like most transfer windows of the last sort of like 5 years, there's been at least one major deal and several like interesting other side ones, whether it's just like someone going from like amateurs and National League to like a lower tier club and Scandinavia or America or things like that. Like a few of those ones let it in there. Maybe one or two like guys going into a academy team for a better like a top flight club somewhere in Europe. There's been a few of those. There's always been like a selection of those kind of ones. What we had here in January, a January transfer window, which a lot of clubs spoke about, and a lot of stuff that was written about it during the window was about how it's very difficult to get deals done. It's always difficult in January. Probably got to be cautious. Don't expect too much. And like I'm watching this from a Kiwi footballer's perspective and just seeing guys flying all over the place. Like, sweet. That applies to you. It doesn't apply to us. I've got, I think, 21 players listed here who signed new professional contracts with like legit clubs. I'm not just talking about like amateurs and semi-pros and stuff. I'm just specifically talking about the high-end professional type things. That's nuts. And it's not just like 21 of those guys. Like Joe Bell's move was a big deal, like money involved move, not just a free transfer. Like there's a transfer fee involved. The Kakache is an initial loan, but it's going to come with a transfer fee when they make that permanent at the end of the year, hopefully. Chris Wood, blockbuster stuff. Like there's several of those headline ones, and there's even more of those other ones scattered about. It's just like the instances of these type of transfers individually aren't unique. Like Sarpreet Singh went to Bayern Munich a couple of years ago. These things have happened before. It's just there's so many of them, and what was supposedly a difficult January transfer window is nuts. It's nuts. It's been hectic to keep up with, but also extremely fun to keep up with.
You've mentioned the big Donnies a lot, right? Kakache, Chris Wood, like all these kind of characters. And you also said 21 new contracts. What is one or two deep cuts where they don't get into your little like top 5 tweets or your most intriguing list or like headline status, but a couple of the deep cuts in that group of 21 Flying Kiwis transfers or new contracts, as you said, that you find interesting or that you think football fans might find interesting, given that they also might not have known too much, considering like all the headline acts in the transfer market?
Yeah, I think I don't know. There's a couple that would sit in that category. I reckon definitely the NWSL ones. Ali Riley getting traded to Angel City FC, who are up until this point famous for being an expansion club whose ownership is largely comprised of high-profile female celebrities from America and a few Hollywood types, and Serena Williams is involved, and Serena Williams' husband is an investor who's also involved and things like that. I think, like that side of it is on one part cool that kind of money is going into the league. Also, on another hand, very cringy. You know how those things tend to go. But Ali Riley is a California native, born in California, raised in California, Kiwi father, I believe, who obviously must have moved there or something like that. So she's effectively moving home. That's cool. Gets away from what was a tricky sort of rebuilding scenario in Orlando Pride. Katie Bowen as well, getting traded to North Carolina. Not traded. She was waived and effectively released and then signed by North Carolina Courage. So she's now a teammate of Abby Erceg. That's awesome. A couple Kiwis teaming up in the NWSL. I actually don't think that's ever happened before. There's only been about 6 or 7 who have played in that league before. Have talked a little bit about Alex Grieve signing with St Mirren in the Scottish Premiership. That's a very cool one. But as I say, I've mentioned that a little bit. It's an undercover one, but it's an undercover one that has got some coverage. I reckon Ollie White, who's a guy on a similar level in terms of what he was doing at the National League, like he was the best player of the South Central Series, which Grieve wasn't able to be a part of, but Grieve was the MVP of the qualifying stages of the Northern League. So Ollie White, similar caliber player in terms of how much he dominated domestically here. He's signed with FC Haka in Finland, where he's going to be a teammate of Logan Rogerson's, who was there on loan last year and has signed permanently since. That's cool. I reckon also that like this is a lower level than St. Mirren in Scotland, but that probably means it's a level he can go straight in and be effective from the start and do really well in. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And well, it's about 4 players. I would also chuck in maybe chuck in a little bit of Vic Essen just for finals. Vic Essen, who's been playing for Valtnes in Norway the last 2 seasons, really good there. First season they were like threatening to qualify for Europe for a while there. Ended up fading and down the stretch, finished about 4th or something like that. Had a bunch of fixtures against the best teams and in like the last month or 2 of the season and basically lost them all. So it was like they were threatening, and then it was like, oh, okay, we're not quite good enough. But still, really good season. Second season she was there, they were terrible, and they were struggling to avoid relegation pretty much the whole time. So she's not gone back there. Instead, she's signed with SC Sand in the German Bundesliga. This will be I haven't actually checked the extent of the contract. I assume it's just until the end of the season, because pretty much in general, women's football contracts, they don't even say the lengths of them because they're almost always just 1 season things. Outside of the best teams, no one tends to make financial commitments like that. SC Sand have been awful. I think they've got 2 points this season at the halfway stage, so yet to win a game. About 9 points off of safety, almost certain to be relegated. Their regular keeper did an ACL, similar to Kakache's situation, coming in to replace someone who's done an ACL. Their keeper's done an ACL. She pops over, play 6 months or something like that, second half of the season with SC Sand, hopefully get some games. And then because the Norwegian season is year on year, this one is the sort of crossover year season, then I guess that opens her up to sign somewhere else, either in Germany or the English leagues, things like that, of similar timeframes, wherever, I don't know. But as a short-term deal, quite a good one. Get some like high standard of football under her belt. Hannah Wilkinson actually did this last year. She played for Duisburg, I think. She's played the second half of the season with them as they got relegated, but scored a couple goals, got a little bit of form out of that. Is now scoring every other game for Melbourne City in the A League. So it's been a formula that's worked before. Also, SC Sand is one of a couple of Bundesliga clubs who have made a little bit of a habit of signing Kiwi players in the past. Betsy Hassett used to play there. Rebecca Stott used to play there. Most recently, Paige Satchel played there a little bit. Now Vic Essen's going to play there. So this is another interesting little one, which is probably only going to be for like 6 months, but still, good standard of football as the football Ferns is. I would say, well, no, I don't think it's in doubt at all. She's the third string goalkeeper, but Lily Olfeld's been in good form for the Wellington Phoenix, very visible as well, playing for the Phoenix. So there will be surely plenty of people talking about her getting national team selection. Here's Vic Essen put like just the big open palm sort of thing. So hold on a second, wait up, like give me a chance, let me do something first, and we'll see how it goes.
Boom. Great podcast. Beautiful podcast. We will be back next week with the podcast, variety show early in the week, Patreon podcast early in the week, niche cast later in the week. Emails coming out tomorrow, Friday dispatch. Just stay tapped in. Lots of Kiwi sporting yarns to be had over the weekend. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Chirp.